1517 to Paris. This film tells the real-life story of three men whose brave act turned them into heroes during a high-speed railway ride. Clint Eastwood is the director, and in a bold move he cast Stone, Sadler, and Skarlatos as themselves. Fair warning, there are some minor spoilers here, but for the most part I'm going to assume everyone knows the purpose of this movie, otherwise why would you go and see it? I'm about to talk more in depth about how the casting worked and the movie in general. But before that, I want to take a quick second to tell you more about myself to give you some context here. I recently separated from active duty as a member of the United States Air Force. I feel like I need picture for proof these days, so here you go. Man, I look pretty good. Anyone following my videos may notice the Grizzly Adams beard that I've started growing. It's kind of a tradition after leaving the military, you just kind of let your beard grow. Being in the Air Force, the incident in Paris was especially known throughout our community. I'm not here to talk about what transpired after the incidents because that really has no bearing on this film. I just want to make you aware that I am now an Air Force vet, so I expected to connect more with this movie than I really did. There's no better person for this movie to be directed towards, for as far as an audience goes, than this guy right here. Now that you've got some context for where I'm coming from with my assessment, let's start with the core idea of this film. That core is really that your life may lead to one moment of making a difference, and how the things leading up to them shape and form what you will do in that very moment. It doesn't really do a very good job of relaying that message, but I could see what Eastwood was really trying to do here. You may be surprised to hear that casting really isn't the main problem here. The problem is the story leading up to the actual terrorist attack. There is no substance there. It feels like you are watching some random home movies leading up to the actual train. There are very little things that get you emotionally connected with these guys. It's all really just surface level. So with that, let's talk about the acting, because it doesn't really do the weak dialogue any favors. The movie spends a good bit of its runtime with these guys meeting as children and facing some really relatable problems. Unfortunately, the kid actors aren't convincing as real kids. And in all honesty, I think some of that comes down to Eastwood's direction. It kind of feels like a lot of these takes should have been done again, but for whatever reason, Eastwood found them acceptable. I don't really understand what he was doing with that, because they don't work. So yes, the casting issue. One of the biggest experiments in this movie is casting Stone, Sadler, and Skarlatos to play themselves. They're not as bad as I feared, but they are not actors. Casting them made this film feel like a boring documentary covering everything that didn't pertain to the event. Amazingly, following the actual guys going through actual events, it somehow seems wooden and faked. It was kind of bizarre and boring, if I'm honest. In the military, it is custom to usually show some type of slideshow to commemorate the retirement of a military member. Most of this film feels like a military slideshow, and the runtime does this approach no favors. The movie has all of the substance of an actual slideshow. Very two-dimensional approach to some seemingly mundane events that could have actually led to something if there was some good direction and acting. We could have really gotten into the mind of Stone as he kind of struggled to find purpose. And not only that, but you could have gotten the audience a better look at what it was like to be in the military, how real military guys interact with one another, the candidness, the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the stresses, the crazy things that military guys find humor in. All that is missed opportunities, and then they completely gloss over Stone's time in basic military training, which could have been a good opportunity to show the transition from civilian to military. In some ways, it's like the transition from a boy into a man. An additional plot point in the movie was Stone being unable to get the job he had trained for due to some depth perception problems. A lot of military members deal with being put into jobs that we didn't necessarily want, and most of the time it's due to things like depth perception or color blindness, stuff that civilians usually don't think about. However, that struggle for Stone comes and passes in an instant in the movie. It's completely waste opportunity. I cannot emphasize this enough. I wanted to connect with this film. I went through a lot of the struggles that Spencer Stone deals with in the movie. I was bullied at school. I transitioned from public school to a Christian school. I played gunfights and military tactics in the woods growing up with my friends, just like the kids in this movie. Stone had a job at a smoothie joint and I had a job at Blockbuster. Be kind, rewind. He had to lose 30 pounds to join the military. I had to lose 40. Not gonna lie, most of that's back now that I'm a civilian again. There are just a lot of things in this movie that I was predisposed to connect with, but it is delivered in such a strange, superficial way that I just wasn't allowed to. I will say that one of the greatest things in this movie is the actual terrorist attack on the train, the title of the movie. It's captured very well and is one of the few times that casting the real guys to play themselves really kind of works. Eastwood's ability to direct an action scene lends itself very well to this part of the movie and is really heart-pounding when the whole thing goes down. However, it's not nearly enough to carry this movie, and in no reality would it ever be enough to carry this movie. No matter what approach this thing took, it was going to have to be relying on the journey towards the actual terrorist attack. And this just felt like watching a reenactment of home movies. I'm really sad that this movie just didn't work, and I really think a lot of the problem here has to rest with Eastwood. And this is coming from a huge Clint Eastwood fan. I loved his last military-centric film, American Sniper. The 1517 to Paris certainly isn't an awful movie. It's just an extremely boring one. I guarantee that you will be looking at your watch during the film. If you get up and use the bathroom at any time before the actual train scene at the end, you'll miss absolutely nothing. If you see this movie, the only thing that you will remember the next day is the actual terrorist attack on the train, and everything else will be brain dumped within minutes of walking out of the theater. In the end, I'm going to have to give the 1517 to Paris 3.5 Eastwoods out of 10.